Hi, welcome to Actual Spinster. Before I get into the video, I've left a link to in my description to a GoFundMe for Allah and her family whilst they're stuck in Gaza. If you could check that out, that would be wonderful. Today I'm going to talk about the books I read in November. I haven't had like an especially good reading month, although I did read some things. It's just been a bit of a rough time. But yeah, if you saw my November vlog, maybe you'll kind of already know that. Sorry, I can't decide if my messy hair is actually a look or not. Yeah, so I struggled a lot with reading this month, which also means I actually did a bunch of zine reading, which was really nice, and I also read some more graphic novels. I also was kind of trying to, sorry, I've got a lot of pain in my shoulder today. I was also trying to kind of keep like the vibe of October gothic going, because I was just like in the mood for that, and I sort of still am. I haven't quite like finished with that, so I might keep going this month, but we'll see. In that vein, I read A Guest in the House by E.M. Carroll, which is like when I visited the Vampire Castle, I think it was called, like last month in October, which I really enjoyed aside from the abrupt ending. And I felt like almost exactly the same about this one, unfortunately. I mean, I love the drawing, like I think it's gorgeous. I can't remember, I think it might have been a review that described their work as like sensual grotesque, which I would really agree with and I really enjoyed. And for me, like it's not like, I mean, it's like kind of horror-y, but like I wouldn't say like it doesn't cross the line for me where I'm like I can't enjoy it, because I wouldn't say I'm like particularly into like gore or horror or anything, but at the same time like clearly I like some of that. And so yeah, there's like sapphic grotesque also almost too, although I think that maybe misrepresents it a little bit, but there's definitely a sort of like queer desire in all of their work, but also that I've read so far, but also that like some of that is kind of like horrific, and there's an interesting play there, and like it's very like bodily. But yeah, so this is sort of about like a woman who's married to a man who has like a young child whose like past wife died, and then it's like what happened to that wife. So it's you know, it's very Jane Eyre / Rebecca energy. But yeah, and I felt like it was really good, and then it just ended, and it was such a shame. I just feel like there's so much potential, and it was like building up to something, and then so I couldn't give it, I mean, like if you're just rating this on the look of the graphic novel, like, you know, the illustration and the drawings and stuff, I think I would give it like 4 or 5 stars. Like I loved that, but yeah, with the plot I just felt like really there's something missing, and it's not in the lead up, it's just like those final moments. You're like, wait, this is where it ends? Like, shouldn't there be more pages here? Like but then I actually read a book that I've like another graphic novel that I've had my eye on for a long time, since it came out, which was 2015. And that's Baba Yaga's Assistant, and I can't remember if I learned this before, or like if it was like why I was like, oh, this is the time to pick it up, or if but either way, like it's actually illustrated by the same illustrator, or like by the same writer, but it's not written by the same person. So E.M. Carroll does the illustrations for this. So, and you can definitely tell there's like a through line. I mean, it's a much more, so this was, did I actually say what it is? Baba Yaga's Assistant by Marika Makula. Yeah, like it's fun, and it was very sweet too. I liked it for that. It's a story about kind of growing up and grief, and also like fairy tales and their role in life, and finding a place for yourself in the world, I guess. And yeah, like the main character is this girl whose dad is remarrying, and then like the person he's remarrying, I think it's remarrying, has like a kid, and she's probably like, I don't know, 14, 15, no idea, but like a girl, but like an older-ish girl, and her grandma used to tell her like stories about Baba Yaga, and like also tricked Baba Yaga, and so clearly Baba Yaga is in this, and she's looking for an assistant. So the girl's like, oh, I'm gonna leave this place and I'm gonna try and be her assistant. I thought it was very sweet, and I definitely enjoyed it. So then the next thing I read was actually a zine, although maybe I read this first. I think I read this first. Okay, I think now we get into like a slew of zine reading. So I read this zine, which is definitely the more like kind of like formal zine of it. This is Factory of One, by Steph Lynn, and it's a really cool zine. So this is like a punch card, right, which is used for knitting machines, and also, you know, technological development allowed computer programming also to come through that development. That was a very bad way of saying it, but hopefully you get what I mean. So this is about the history of the knitting machine, or like textiles and technology, the advancements of those two things together, and then also opposition to those, and like its position within like capitalism and in creating a capitalist workforce, or like not a capitalist workforce, but like the worker for capitalism. And it's split into different sections. So there is one about Luddites, so we love that. There is just also one about kind of the history of framework knitting in general. Then there's one about like when knitting machines became like domesticated and you could buy one for your home and create like stuff for your children and or to sell. And then there's a bit about computerization, and then there's also a kind of reflection on what it's like to be a worker who produces stuff, making clothes. Yeah, there's like an interview that I really like. There's also some very, it's a good zine. There's also this page which shows the surveillance and all of this technology that is part of Israeli apartheid and genocide and just like murdering as many fucking people as possible. There's like a very interesting bit. Yeah, I don't know, like there's I really like this. It deneutralizes the concept of technological advance. It ties it explicitly not only to capitalist production, which is bad, but also to deeply unethical practices and behaviors, you know, such as being part of, you know, technology that is used to, for example, like murder people, to target Palestinians in Gaza, to store information in order to surveil people, like that kind of thing. And I like that a lot, and I feel like I'm really interested in the Luddites. Obviously, I read Shirley last month, and that is about the Luddite disturbances in the 1810s. And, so that really interests me because I love textiles, and I am interested in, like, the development of textile history and working class history as part of that, but also as, like, a Marxist, as someone who's critical, to say the least, of the way that goods are produced. I feel I feel a kinship, I guess, with Luddites and their philosophy, but also that I think, like, you know, they were destroying things, and like I think people should focus on that because there's a kind of militancy to their behaviour. They were also militant, they got more militant as time went on, but also that, like, it's not that they were against craftsmanship, it's not that they were against textiles or art or even technology. It's that they're against the use of technology to deprive workers of things that they need, i.e. a wage, food, support for their families. Like, it's not about being, you know, so this is why I like this, because this kind of stands in the tension of it, because it's obviously made by someone who loves textiles, making them, knitting, like whatever, but also who's like critical of an industry that produces more and more exploitation for the people that create clothes, which are supposedly, you know, about art and creativity and self-expression, but can they really be when they're, you know, made by people who are alienated in their workplaces, you know, like, yeah, anyway, that was like a lot of shit about that, but hopefully, you know, I'll leave a link to where I got it if you're interested in checking more it out. But I have two zines that I actually printed out, and they are both free, so I will also link these below. I just knocked my phone off, so hopefully this is still basically how it was working. So we're talking about the zines. I mean, basically, like, I would like to say, I don't think I'm going to talk about zines every month that I read, but it's just this month I got super into reading zines, so I feel like it was part of my reading landscape quite intensely, and I obviously also struggle to read other things too, so I feel like it's nice to chat about. I definitely am looking for zine recommendations if you have any, so please let me know. But also, you know, like, I think on purpose zines are like not a part of published decisive literature like books, and I think that's okay. I think that's kind of why they're great, is because they are about like flattening and non-hierarchies, and you know, I don't think that they need to be valued in the same way as books. In fact, I feel like that would create a weird system of value that, like, zines are actively against, you know. I hope that makes sense. Like, I just sort of feel like it's a different kind of reading, generally, and I think that's okay and that's good. And just because I don't talk about it, or I won't potentially in the future, doesn't mean I think it's bad, but it's like different and it's for a different purpose, and like we don't need to be all hoity-toity about it, you know? I don't know. I hope that made sense. The next scene I read was this, which is fan fiction, a satire by Tavi Gevinson. I used to really love Ricky. Like, I like Tavi Gevinson quite a lot. I think she's a very intelligent writer, I guess, and I don't like super pay attention to what she's been doing, but I don't remember how, but I saw this, maybe because I did subscribe to her newsletter recently or something, or was it through this that I subscribed to her newsletter? I can't remember. Anyway, I must have seen it somehow, and so yeah, I was like, all right, I'll bite. Yeah, I think I started reading it quite a long time ago, actually, and then it was this month that I was like, okay, fine, I'll finish it now. So this is, yeah, a zine. It's a sort of satire fiction, you know, autofiction kind of zine, that is about Tavi Gevinson's relationship with Taylor Swift. So it's about Taylor Swift music, so there's like a bit that's about like her music and the lyrics and like blah blah blah, and then there's also like a bit that's about Tavi's like memories of an experience of like meeting Taylor Swift and kind of being friends with Taylor Swift, and then there's like a third section which is about like Tavi writing a book that's based off of like her experiences with Taylor Swift, and then Taylor Swift sending emails and them having a conversation with them, like whether it's okay to publish and blah blah blah. So yeah, I think, you know, some of it is evidently based off of like actual things that happened. I don't think that the emails are real at all, but you know, I could be wrong. And you know, I think Tavi wants people to not 100% know which is real or not. That's part of the fun for her, I think. But yeah, like I did really enjoy this, and it did make me deeply nostalgic. I used to love Taylor Swift. I do not anymore. Like when I say used to, I mean like when when I was 13 and it was not cool to like Taylor Swift. I like Taylor Swift. I love Taylor Swift actually for a long time, and then like, you know, 3-4 years, I don't know. Is that how time works? 5 years, whatever. But then as she got more popular, and also as she got more happy, more mainstream, and less weird girl, I felt so alienated from her. Because what I liked about her was that she was this weird obsessive freak who lived more in her fantasies than in reality. And so yeah, I stopped being able to identify with her music so much, and then I also just like stopped liking her as a person, partially because I realised how much of what she was presenting was constructed, which was obviously true the whole time. I just wasn't aware of it, and I felt very authentically connected to her, and then once I realised that, yeah. Anyway, just a little bit of a lore for you about my relationship with Taylor Swift. So yeah, like I wasn't really reading this because I'm interested in Taylor Swift. I was more reading it because I'm interested in Tavi Gevinson, I guess, but then also, yeah, like it is also about nostalgia and memory, because of course it is, as Taylor Swift, and those things I'm interested in. And I don't know, like, yeah, it was enjoyable. I don't like really know who I would recommend it to, but I guess if the things I said sound interesting, then check it out. And it's definitely playful, like it's fun. The other zine that I read and also printed out was Not Your Pretentious Curator's Museum Guidebook, which is made by Alexa Kari, who has a YouTube channel and stuff. I'll also leave links and blah 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 below. This is like specifically a zine. I mean, somewhat the idea is that you would take it to a specific museum and you would like fill it out as you're there, or like after you've been there. But also it's a general kind of primer that I liked, that's about like some of the basic kind of questions about museums, their political position, like what it means, if they claim neutrality, you know, like the history of these institutions, who and what is a museum for, and so there's just, yeah, like some interesting bits and bobs. I definitely recommend it if you're like interested in kind of thinking critically about museums but you don't know where to begin, or you're a bit overwhelmed by all the like very interesting stuff coming in museum studies at the moment, and you want, yeah, a place to start, because I think this is good, and it also means you can start to think about what you actually also think. There is also this works cited page, which is useful, except from the font on this is very small. So I think my only criticism would be that the font on this page is too small. So if you want to look at the citations, it's a little bit difficult. But aside from that, I think it's a great solid routine. I think it's a great solid zine, and yeah, I definitely recommend it. Okay, from that zine interlude, we get to The Vampire by John William Polidori. I listened to this. I found like a sort of collection of vampire tales anthology, and I read like bits from it. And this was one of them. I thought it would like be kind of interesting to read, you know, this story, which obviously inspired a lot of stuff, or like prefigures maybe some of the like more common tropes in vampire like fiction and stuff. I mean, everybody has said this who's talked about it, it's not very good, and I agree, it's not very good. It's not very interesting, but I read it, so there's that. Also, it's helpful to try and get my my percentage of books read from before, that were published from before 2000, higher up, so that was also why I was like, may as well check it out. And it was on audio, which, like I said, I'm struggling to actually read, so audio was doing okay-ish. Although, yeah, I mean, it was like a short book, so that's also why I could read it. The next thing I read was from my little fake, not real TBR for like Edwardian November, which is also not real, but a cute project potentially. So this one I showed in that, and that's The First Men in the Moon by H.G. Wells, which was published serially from 1900 to 1901, and it's about two men who they develop this like substance that can travel, and it takes them to the moon, and then, you know, they explore the moon, and it's about that. I think the criticism of capitalism does come into this, but mostly in the later section, and it also is like a criticism of colonialism too, and sort of like foolish imperial ideas. The narrator is like very different from the scientist, who's the other man who's like the main character in this, and he has a much more kind of, or at least less problematic response and approach to like alien life, and also just human life in general. Like, the narrator is very like gung-ho, and there's a bit where they eat some mushrooms, they get drunk, and then he starts talking about colonialism, and it is very funny and like silly because he's an idiot, like it's showing him to be silly. But yeah, anyway, I mean, overall it was like an interesting book to read, I guess. Obviously it's like an early sci-fi novel, so that is quite interesting, thinking about kind of the gap between scientific knowledge and scientific practice, and then this is kind of between those, but then also it's maybe even more than that. It's that like there's a gap between scientific practice in terms of like they haven't been able to go to the moon yet, right? Like that happened in 1966 or whatever, but this novel kind of doesn't actually supersede like what happened and the information that was gathered from going to the moon, but it can do some of the imaginative work of what that could be like, and that's kind of interesting. And yeah, there's some, yeah, like I said, there's some criticism of kind of like the way that workers are treated and stuff like that through the inhabitants that are interacted with on the moon or in the moon. So that was you know, something. Yeah, I've got a little bit interested in reading H.G. Wells' stuff recently, which hasn't really happened to me before because I wasn't interested in what he had to say. But for some reason I've just been feeling like, yeah, maybe I will check it out. I kind of want to read The War of the Worlds. It's also because he's become more interesting to me because of the direction that my PhD is in right now, or like the part of it that I'm working on in terms of socialist fiction. So then I was thinking about him as a socialist writer and as someone who potentially produces socialist fiction. So like he's written a book called A Modern Utopia, which I might read. It's from 1905, and When the Sleeper Wakes is another utopian one that he wrote, I think from 1899. But yeah, I think, to be honest, the next one I actually will really do genuinely want to read is The War of the Worlds. I did watch an adaptation of that, but like, yeah, I've never read it. And I mean, his work is pretty short, so that's one thing that's going for him. Okay, next I have another graphic novel. Yeah, I feel like you can really tell that graphic novels were what was like what I was able to read, and also I was enjoying them. Like all of these I enjoyed. Like I do think that they can be so beautiful, and like that's really lovely. It's like really nice to, yeah, be able to spend some time with some art and a story, and like, you know, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. In comparison with my other months, like my normal kind of reading month, like I read three graphic novels, which is very high, I feel like. So this one is Mouseguard, Autumn 1152 by David Peterson. Yeah, so Mouseguard is about a little collection of mouse guards. Basically, you know, mice are very small in the world. There's lots of things that are predators to them, and like can hurt them. So a little band of courageous cute mice form in order to protect people so that they can, like, you know, I don't know, take like a farmer from if they're going from one town to another, like, and to sell things, or like if people need to go visit someone, like, you know, whatever. The overarching theme is that there's this particular enemy who wants to disband the Mouse Guard, and like who's very anti them as a concept, and like think mice should live differently than they do. And so they like are sort of fighting against that. I did think it was cute. I will say, okay, there's like 2 women mice. Feels like a really stupid thing to say. First of all, I thought there was more, because I was like, and then I was like, no, I don't think I was correct. I went in with my eyes on feminism, which it just is a shame. Like, I don't understand, like, they're mice. Like, they're mice. They're all baby tiny things. It was cute, and I think I am reading the 2nd volume currently, and I might keep reading it, I don't know. It is, like, I do think it's drawn really nicely, and I love how the mice look. I think they are really cute, so. But I feel like all I can really say about it is that it's really cute. Like, the story is, like, okay. It's not like the characters feel, like, exceptionally strong. I still find it kind of hard to differentiate between which character is which, because they all do look quite similar. The next thing I read was another vampire audio interlude. So this was Let Loose by Mary, I know you don't say it how it's written, Mary Chumley? Is that how you say it? It's spelt Cholmondeley, but I'm pretty sure it's not said that way. Anyway, this was from the 1890s, and yeah, it's like a very short story, kind of about a vampire, but to be honest, like, it didn't feel very vampiric to me. It felt more like zombie kind of, and yeah, I didn't find it very convincing. You know, I listened to it. Really just sums it up, doesn't it? I've mentioned this before, but like me and my friend Mari, we're reading through a series of unfortunate events, and we did take like a little break, I think for a couple months, but we read another one again after that little break, which was nice to have. I think it was actually a good idea to have, especially because I actually ended up really enjoying the next one. So this one was the 7th one, and it's The Vile Village. I think it's like definitely up there with like the best ones in the series for me. It might be my favourite, but like, I mean, that feels kind of crazy to say. But anyway, I just ended up really enjoying it. I actually read it really, really fast. I listened to these on audio. I mean, the mystery of the central to the story is even more kind of coming into view, but also still kind of farther away. But it doesn't feel like, you know, that's constructed to keep the story going on. It genuinely feels like, yeah, it is really hard to access information and to have the conversations at the right time before people get swooped away. Adults are, as ever, deeply disappointing. And yeah, no, I just really enjoyed it. I don't know why, if I can particularly articulate why anyway, but yeah. Okay, and then the next things I read is another zine. This is Not a Love Story, Love Kills Punk and the First 20 Years of Anarcho-Feminism in Romania by Adina Marinsea, which I actually got to give to someone, but like, I wanted to read it first. So I did. Yeah, no, it's interesting. I mean, it's sort of what it says. I wouldn't say it's really the first 20 years. I think it's more like the first 15 years, really. And it's focused on, yeah, the music scene more so than a kind of general wider thing. But a lot of, I think, punk and anarcho-feminist organising was happening through music scene. So, yeah. And Love Kills was this, like, kind of collective in Romania. And so it's about that and what they were doing. They organised like some festivals and stuff like that. It was interesting. £1.50 and you can get it, so I'll leave a link to it below. I also read another thing that I mentioned in the Edwardian November TBR, and that was one short story from this collection, which is Horror Stories by E. Nesbit, and I read the short story The Three Drugs. Yeah, it was okay. I wouldn't say I hated it, and I wouldn't say I loved it. And it was interesting to read a story that's obviously supposed to be scary, by a writer that you just do so much associate with children's books. And of course, like, sometimes there's like scary bits in children's books, and like sometimes people write explicitly like horror books for children and stuff. And obviously, like, I mean, A Series of Unfortunate Events is a good example of like, there's a lot of scary scenarios for children, and you know, the response is not that it's not scary, right? But still, I mean, reading this, it was obviously for adults. There was some language that I didn't like in it. I do kind of want to read the rest of this collection, I guess, but not anytime soon. And I think a lot of it is from the 1890s, so that's also why I only read that story, which I could ascertain was definitely published in 1907. Let me check that. No, 1908. So yeah, those are the things that I read. I thought I would just mention these 2 books that I am currently reading. This one I did, I think, start in October because I Oh, maybe, yeah, I think so. I either started it on a Shabbat on purpose because I wanted to read like a Jewish book, or I started it on Yom Kippur also on purpose because I wanted to read a Jewish book. This is Silka the Wild by Zizman Segalovich, translated by Daniel Kennedy from the Yiddish. Yeah, so I've just been like reading like little snippets, but I did read a bit more of it recently. I read like a chunk, oh, sorry about the lighting. I read like a chunk on Yom Kippur and I really enjoyed it. There's like this lovely line that I loved and I just keep thinking about when I read this, which is that like God spent Shabbos in the forest because like the light is so beautiful and it's such a beautiful place, and I just like love that. Like, it's so true, isn't it? Like, God does spend Shabbos in the forest. Like, oh yeah. I'm gonna keep reading this. It's about a young girl, like 19, called Silka, and like her life. She grew up in this woods with like her dad, who's like the manager of the wood, and then like the people who own the woods, like they have a son called Sasha who like she's sort of interested in, but also, you know. And then the other book is a book that was on my autumn/winter TBR. This is the children's book by A.S. Byatt, and basically the major reason why I've been going so slowly with this is because also I don't have the like capacity to really pay that much attention, and because I've been loving it so much and it's so like me, I've been really wanting to, so I've been feeling like I can't, you know, I've got to read it at the right time when I really can pay attention. You know, occasionally you are just like, okay, I'm not doing my best reading, but you know, I want to read the story anyway, and that's fine. Like, I mean, you can't be 100% on it 100% of the time, like that's just not how people work or attention or like enjoying things works either. But yeah, I just loved it. I even like read the beginning twice. Like, I kind of started it again because I just like loved it so much, and I when I first began it I wasn't expecting to love it so much because I was just like, I mean, I didn't expect not to, but I just like didn't think it would be like so perfectly for me. But then yeah, so it's about this it's like clearly there's like a lot of people in this, which is, I would say, the probably hardest aspect of it. It's like knowing who everyone is. But yeah, it's about this main family who's like mother, she's a writer for children, but also like her child as well as this other man's child, when she's at the V&A, I think it is, talking to this like specialist of the collections about like what's in the collection because she's looking for inspiration for her latest children's book. The two boys, they are, you know, exploring stuff, and they see this other child like who's drawing from the collection, who's like whatever, and they find that he's been like sleeping in the museum. This is right at the beginning, like it's not, and yeah, he's called Philip and he loves like art and pottery, especially ceramics, and so it's sort of about him as well, and he gets like invited to the Wellwoods, which is the writer's family, and yeah, and they're like part of the socialist utopian socialist aesthetic movement, arts and crafts, William Morris, all of that stuff. It's set in 1897, I think is when it begins. They even mentioned the Social Democratic Federation. Like, I just cannot underline how much this is Anna book. And like, I also thought it was really interesting, there was this commentary about what it means to be a child in this particular time, that I thought was super fascinating, and I think that this book is trying to kind of speak to. Oh yeah, and obviously also this is about, yeah, because it's about like socialist understandings at that time of the production of art, this book is also obviously very interested in that, and then of course it's also a book, so it's also playing around a lot with that as part of its, I don't know, like central pull in terms of the story, that the story is taking seriously the creation of objects of art in terms of like literary and also like, you know, ceramics, for example. Also to do that in an unalienated way, potentially. There's been quite a lot of discussion about craft, hasn't there? But I'm definitely looking forward to keeping reading this. I've definitely talked for long enough, so I'm gonna cut myself off there, also because I'm really hungry. But I hope you're having a nice day when you're watching this. Definitely let me know what you read in November, and yeah, I will talk to you when I next talk to you. Bye.